Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Trishan and welcome to my channel. So this is the first time I'm actually making a video where I'm in front of the camera and actually speaking to the camera. The past videos that I have uploaded is just a time lapse of me working through the project and not really explaining anything, and I thought it would be cool to actually start making this type of videos again and upload them to YouTube. So yeah, let's see how it goes. So the main reason why I decided to record and document this project is because I recently started uploading a lot of my finished projects, my finished renders onto TikTok, and I thought it'd be cool to actually document the entire process and kind of show you guys the process I take and the methods that I use to actually get to the end result. Follow me on TikTok. So when I got this idea, I had just finished watching Stranger Things season 4 part 1, and I thought it would be cool to actually have a project that kind of revolves around the Stranger Things vibe and has certain elements from the Stranger Things universe. So my idea was to take a cool car and put it into the upside down period correct car, so something from 70s or the 80s, something that kind of matches the timeline for Stranger Things. So the car could be slightly modified, maybe stock, or just chilling there in an empty parking lot, or maybe on an abandoned road, or something like that. By the way, the project's already done. I just decided to make this video afterwards for whatever reason, and yeah, here we are. Also, this cool idea where the lights of the car would flicker as the camera panned around it. Just taking some elements of the show and slapping it into my render. I wasn't actually sure whether I should go ahead with adding the lights or not, because I wasn't sure how it was going to affect the render, whether it was still going to look cool or not. So you'll see how the final render ended up. Okay, so before we hop into the time lapse of me actually working on the project, I just want to let you guys know that this is not a tutorial. It's more of me just showing you my workflow and my thought process and how I got to the final product. If you guys do want to see a tutorial, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Just so you know, the softwares that I'm using here is Maya, Substance Painter, and I'm rendering with Arnold. Also, all the 3D assets that aren't mine, I will leave a link to them in the description in case you may want to use them. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so let's hop straight into Maya and load in some files. So this is the vehicle that we're going to be using. It's a Toyota AE86. It's from the 80s, so it's kind of a period correct vehicle to be using in this render. So I've actually played with this model before. I've changed small things about it, but if you download this model from the link in the description, it won't be much different. So now I started sorting out the ground plane. I wanted to have a road and a separate object as the rest of the ground. So I decided to change certain attributes of the initial plane that was on the ground, since I still had some history on it, and make it into a road that's roughly the correct scale. I just sized it according to the car and went from there. Once I was happy with the placement of the road, I extruded an edge far enough to create the ground, and once I was happy with the placement of it, I just extracted the face, so it became two separate objects that I can manipulate individually later on. I decided to start importing some more resources into the project. This specific resource that I've imported is 3 trees. I've already adjusted them according to how I want the trees to look within the scene. So once I brought the trees in, I needed to know where to place them. In order to place them, I can't just have like a flat piece of ground, because that's not how the ground works. So I decided to start to subdivide the ground plane and start sculpting. So once I was happy with the ground that I sculpted and the final shape that I had, I started placing the trees around. Because I only had 3 trees, I duplicated them a bunch, I rescaled them, I rotated them, I just manipulated them in a bunch of different ways so they don't all look like the same tree. At this point, I was pretty happy with the ground, so I decided to start adjusting my camera and placing the camera where I would like it to be in the final render, and just adjust the overall scene to suit the camera. Also added an extra ground plane on screen, right, and sculpted that because it was just emptiness. So at this point, I started playing around with the lighting since I was sort of happy with how everything was looking. So I tried to play with different types of lighting and ended up going with an HDRI from HDRI Haven. I did end up editing it a bit in Photoshop. So once I was happy with how the lighting looked, well, as happy as I could get at that point, I decided to start going into texturing. Now, before you go into texturing, you need to UV unwrap the objects that you're going to texture, which essentially means that you just need to take the 3D object and flatten it out in the 2D space. I decided to start making the vines, which is essentially just using the curve tool that's built into Maya and using the new sweep mesh tool to create a sweep on that curve, and basically you have a ton of different attributes that you can adjust. Yeah, it's a pretty cool tool to use, especially if you want to make some chords or something along those lines. So once I was ready to texture, I hopped into Substance Painter. Substance Painter is pretty cool software to use. There are multiple alternative softwares you can use, but I prefer to use Substance Painter because I enjoy using it. It's pretty much like using Photoshop. So Substance Painter has something called community assets. I like that because there's a lot of really cool materials that you can actually download that's created by the community, and a lot of them are very high quality and very adjustable. To plug in the textures, Maya has this cool Substance Painter plugin that you can use. You just select the renderer you're using. Once you select the renderer, you can select all the materials and it automatically plugs in everything with the correct color spaces and all the correct settings. Now we can do a proper test render and see how everything looks with all the textures plugged in. You can see how the lighting affects everything, and we can adjust the lighting from there. So the one thing about the upside down is that it's like almost like a bluish hue. It's very cold, but in certain seasons, in certain areas, within the upside down, there's always this red glow in the sky, especially now with season 4. There's that red glow, so I wanted to get that, but I also wanted to have this cool environment. So I decided to edit the HDRI image in such a way that I have both the blue and the red. To do this, I added some adjustment layers and some masks onto the image in Photoshop and adjusted it accordingly, and then I just played around with it till I was happy with the result. And yeah, so as I was saying in the beginning of the video, I wanted to test out the flickering lights, and I ended up really liking the effect. I didn't really know how it was going to look in the final render, but I just sent it because why not? So I animated the two headlights to flicker using a small piece of code that basically gives it a random number between 0 and 5 for the exposure. So I also decided to add a red light in the back. I only added one red light in the back because we don't really see the back at all in this render, so it doesn't really matter. So I did the same thing for the back. I added that piece of code for the exposure to randomize between 0 and 5, so it also has that flickering effect. So after this, I decided to hit render, and yeah, it took a while. So once the render was done, I took the image sequence into After Effects so I could do some of the post-production stuff that I wanted to do. One of the things was to add the particle effect that you get in the upside down. I did try and add it in 3D inside of Maya, but it was not giving me the desired results. So I decided to just scrap that idea and do it in post. So in After Effects, what I did was I tracked the footage and then added a video effect. I just played around with it. I did follow a tutorial for this, if anyone's wondering. I just played around with this effect, and once I was happy with how everything was looking, I did a bit of color grading, and yeah, I rendered the final footage. So yeah guys, that's the video. I really enjoyed making it. If you guys enjoyed watching the video, if you guys liked my product, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and yeah, see you guys in the next one. No, I probably look like an idiot.